I want you to see what is behind me on this table. I want you to look at this pile. Every single day, letters arrive here. Not one, not two, many. Divine letters transmitted from the heavenly realm, each one sealed and delivered to this address. I open every one. I read every one. I sit with every one. And the ones that carry a general word, a word of comfort, a word of encouragement, a word for the season. I set them to the side, because as real as they are not always urgent. And then there are the others, the ones that arrive in the very second I begin reading. My hands change. Something goes cold, and then hot at the same time. Something in my chest stops working normally, and I know within the first 3 lines that what I am holding is not for the side pile. What I am holding is for today, for right now, for someone specific who is going to find their way to this video at exactly the right moment. This letter, she touches the open envelope in front of her, is one of those. Out of everything that arrived today, and I am telling you there was no shortage of letters this morning, this is the one that would not let me sit still. This is the one that had me on my feet at 3:15 in the morning, standing at this exact table in the dark, reading it by lamplight because I could not wait until sunrise. This is the one I have read 4 times today already and found something new each time. Not because the words changed, because what they are carrying is so layered, so dense with meaning, that a single reading cannot hold all of it. Now, before I start, I need you to understand something about how this letter was delivered, because it did not arrive as just words. It never does when the message is this important. Inside this envelope, alongside the USB drive that contains the letter itself, there are photographs, printed, physical, real, and there are cards. White cards with declarations written on them in bold black ink. These items were not my idea. They were specified. Each one was placed at a precise moment in the letter, with instructions for exactly when to show it, and exactly what it corresponds to. I did not choose the images. I did not choose the words on the cards. They were chosen before this letter reached me, by the one who sent it. I am going to read this to you in full, every single word, from the very first line to the very last declaration. And when we reach those moments, I will hold up each item so you can see it, not quickly, not as a passing visual, but long enough for it to land. Do one thing for me, one thing only. Stay. Whatever is pulling at you right now, the phone, the noise, the habit of skimming, set it down, because this letter, it was not kept from the side pile by accident. It was written for someone who is in the middle of a season they cannot fully name yet. A season that has pressed longer than it should. A season of questions without answers and waiting without visible end. If that is you, and something in me says it absolutely is, then what Archangel Michael sealed inside this envelope today is the most important thing you will hear all week. I am going to begin now.
Beloved, cherished one, you, whose name was spoken this morning in the throne room of eternity with such fierce and consuming tenderness that even the angels who stand nearest to the Father went completely still to listen. Come close. Come as close as you can right now, and do not look away. Because what I am carrying to you today did not begin in darkness. It began in light. It began at the very source of everything, in a moment of divine decision that heaven made about your life before the sun rose this morning. And what you must understand from the very first breath of this message is this: today is not simply a day of warning. Today is a day of release. Something that was locked, held with precision and purpose, and prepared with extraordinary care for the exact right moment, was set into unstoppable motion this morning. Everything I am about to describe to you, every battle, every confrontation, every declaration I am carrying to you today, is a consequence of that release, not the cause, the consequence. And that distinction changes everything. Let me tell you why. Because this changes the story you may have already started building in your mind about what today is. Most people, when they receive a message like this one, brace themselves. They expect to hear about the enemy first. They wait for the attack. They wait for the threat. They prepare themselves for the dark news before anything else. And yes, I will tell you about those things. You need to know them. But I am not beginning there. I am beginning where today actually began. I am beginning with God. What you are about to see was sealed inside this envelope before this letter was ever read. This image was chosen before today began. Look at it carefully, because what it shows is not imagination. It is a witness. It is a record of the exact moment this morning that everything in this letter was set into motion. Dorothy, reach into the envelope now and hold up the first photograph. At a precise moment this morning, before you opened your eyes, before your feet touched the floor, before the very first ordinary thought crossed your mind, God spoke your name. And what followed that speaking was not a question. It was not a negotiation. It was a declaration, a formal, binding, unrepeatable declaration. The kind that heaven releases when a season changes, when a door is ready to swing open, and when a person is standing at the exact threshold of everything that was written for them before their life even began. He said, and hear this, release it. The time of preparation is complete. What I have held in trust, what I have been maturing in the unseen, what I have been building layer by layer through everything this child has endured and everything this child has overcome. Release it now. Today is the day. Sit with that for one moment. Before the enemy knew a single thing, before any plan was formed, before one solitary force of darkness had any awareness of what was about to break open in your life, God already moved. God already spoke. The release was already in motion. And it was in motion because of something that has nothing to do with your perfection and everything to do with God's faithfulness. It was in motion because of a promise, a specific, personal, original promise made to you before your mother held you, before your story had a single page written, before you had any capacity to earn or forfeit what God had already decided. That promise carries a timeline written upon it in eternal ink. And today, that timeline declared, now. The question, beloved, is not whether the release has happened. It has. The only question before you right now is whether you will be present to receive it. But I need to take you back even further, because before I tell you about what happened, after God spoke this morning, I must take you somewhere. Most people never go. I must take you into the place where I was standing when I heard it. I need you to see, through my eyes, what heaven looks like when it moves on behalf of one of its own. There is a place, and I use that word only loosely, because it is not a room with walls and ceilings and defined edges. There is a space in the eternal realm where God keeps what He has promised. Every word He's ever spoken over a human life is held there, not forgotten, not archived somewhere dim and distant, held, active, alive, ready. The way a seed is alive inside a sealed envelope, not yet planted, but absolutely not dead. Alive in a kind of suspended certainty, waiting for the exact conditions that will allow it to become what it was always created to be. I have stood in that place many times, and I will tell you what strikes me every single time I enter it: the sheer scale of what is unclaimed, the staggering volume of what was spoken over human lives that was never fully received. Not because God changed His mind, not ever, not because the promise expired, but because people gave up before the moment arrived, because the waiting felt like abandonment, because the silence between the promise and its fulfillment felt, to a human heart that was bleeding and tired, like the silence of absence rather than the silence of preparation. Today, I stood in that place and watched God reach in. I watched His hand move with absolute purpose and certainty toward what was held there, with your name on it. And what He drew out, beloved, I cannot describe the magnitude of it in words that will fully translate. But this I can tell you. When He held it up, when He turned it toward the light, when He prepared to release it into your life, it was larger than what you have been praying for. It was more specific than what you have been believing for. It carried within it not just the answers to the prayers you have spoken aloud, but the answers to longings you have never known how to articulate. The things you have wanted so deeply and for so long that you stopped letting yourself want them openly, because wanting them openly and not having them was too painful to bear. God saw those hidden longings. Every single one. They are written into what He released over your life today. Stop. Before this message moves forward, there is a word that was sealed in this envelope specifically for this moment. Not after. Not before. This moment. After you have just heard what God released today and why He released it. Dorothy, take the first white card and hold it up so everyone can read it. Now, I will tell you about the reaction, because that is exactly what it was. A panicked, frantic, desperate reaction. The moment God spoke this morning, the moment the release was set into motion, something shattered across the entire invisible realm. Light moved. And light moving in that quantity, with that kind of divine intentionality, does not go unnoticed. The darkness detected it. And what followed was not strategic. It was not calm. It was panic. Raw, uncontrolled, exposed panic. I need you to understand the difference between strategy and panic, because that difference will help you correctly interpret what has been pressing against you lately. When the enemy operates from a position of calm control, his movements are subtle, quiet, long game. You barely feel them until you look up one day and realize you have drifted further from where you were meant to be than you could have imagined. That is strategy. That is the enemy at his most dangerous, patient, methodical, invisible. But panic looks nothing like that. Panic is loud. Panic is rushed. Panic makes moves built for speed, not sustainability. And here's what I need you to mark closely. Some of what you have been experiencing in recent weeks, the sudden intensity of certain pressures, the sense that several crushing things arrived at once, the feeling that everything seemed manageable last month, and this month, the ceiling is lower. That was not long game strategy. That was the enemy discovering that God was about to move and scrambling to build as many walls as possible before the release could reach you. That was panic. And panic, beloved, is what the enemy looks like when he is losing. A confident enemy does not panic. An enemy who has the situation under control does not call an emergency council. The fact that what has been pressing against you lately felt rushed and desperate rather than slow and quiet. That is your evidence. The darkness already knew the tide had turned. Let me describe to you the council that was convened today, because you need to see it, not so that fear takes hold. Fear is not the purpose, but so that you will understand exactly how profoundly what God is doing in your life has shaken the forces that have spent years working against you. The gathering was urgent, voices overlapping, the kind of chaos that only erupts when those who are accustomed to control discover the situation has moved completely outside their reach. I was given permission to observe it, not as a participant, but as a witness. And the first thing I noticed was how different the atmosphere was from what those councils usually carry. Normally, there is a cold, calculated precision, a frightening efficiency to the way the enemy runs his strategies. Assignments distributed with terrifying specificity, timelines mapped in detail, your vulnerabilities cataloged and marked for targeted strikes. Today, it felt like a room full of commanders who had been handed a problem with no clean solution and were all scrambling to appear competent about it. One voice rose louder than the others. It was arguing for what I can only name as the weapon of substitution. And I want you to understand this weapon carefully, because it is one of the most sophisticated and most damaging tools in the enemy's entire arsenal. And it is one that most people never learn to identify until after it has already cost them something they cannot get back. The weapon of substitution works like this. When the enemy cannot prevent a blessing from coming into your life, when he sees that God's release is already in motion and he cannot stop it, he attempts to arrive first with a counterfeit, something that looks almost exactly like what God promised, something that reaches toward the same longing, addresses the same hunger, presents itself in a form close enough to the genuine article that a person who is exhausted and impatient and has been waiting a long time might, in a moment of weakness, accept it as a substitute, a relationship that carries some of the qualities God promised, but built on a foundation that will not hold, an opportunity that looks like the open door, but leads somewhere different from where God wrote for you to go, a comfort that addresses the surface of the pain without reaching the root, keeping you numb in a way that prevents true healing from ever breaking through. There are things happening in the invisible realm that your eyes cannot see on their own. This image was sealed in this envelope to show you what the moment looked like. The exact moment the enemy's counsel was broken apart today. What happened in that dark chamber when heaven entered it? Dorothy? The second photograph. The voice in that council today said, "She is tired. She has waited long enough that she will settle. Send her something that looks like the answer. Let her choose the copy before the original can arrive. If she accepts the substitute, the real thing waits in holding indefinitely, and we will have bought ourselves another season." I felt something rise in me when those words were spoken. Something that fused anger and grief in a proportion I carry rarely, because I knew how many times that tactic has succeeded. How many beloved daughters of God are living today in circumstances that are almost what He promised, but not quite. Slightly off, functional, but not flourishing, settled, but not truly at rest. And they cannot name what is missing because the gap is subtle. The difference between something that looks right and something that is right, between a door that opens and the door, between a version of love and love itself. I stood up. I was not sent there to remain silent. I declared, with every ounce of authority heaven had placed in me, her discernment is not broken. Her hunger for the real thing has not vanished. It has only been buried under exhaustion and disappointment. But buried is not the same as dead. I am going to her today. And when the genuine article arrives, she will know it. Not because she is perfect, but because God has been sharpening her recognition of it through every counterfeit she found the strength to refuse. Every time she said, "This is not quite right," even when she could not fully explain why, that was heaven working in her. That was her spirit, protecting what God placed inside her. And today, that discernment is not dulled. It is sharpened. She will not be fooled in this season. The room went quieter than I expected, and in that silence, I heard the second weapon being whispered. The weapon of the clock. Every weapon the enemy carries has a name. And what you just heard named, the weapon of substitution, has stolen from too many people for too long. But there is a counter-declaration that was placed in this envelope, in this exact position, to be spoken over your life right now. Dorothy, the second white card. This one, beloved, I will name directly and firmly, because it is the weapon that has inflicted more damage in the lives of women of faith than almost anything else I have witnessed. And it is the weapon the enemy most frequently deploys against women who are standing in the precise season that you are standing in right now. The weapon of the clock is not complicated. Its entire power rests on one single lie. The lie that there is a version of God's best that was only available within a certain window, and that window has closed, or is closing, or will close before you can reach it. It dresses itself in practical language. It says, "You are not young anymore. The opportunities available at 45 are not available at 65. The relationships you could have built 20 years ago cannot be built now. The dreams you carried were for a younger you, and the younger you is gone. What remains is maintenance, not advancement, endurance, not flourishing." Hear what God declares over that lie today, and hear it without softening and without qualification. God's timelines are not governed by human calendars. His promises do not expire because decades have passed. The stories you know from Scripture, the ones involving women told by the world that their window had closed, only to be told by God that it had not even opened yet. Those stories were not recorded as inspirational exceptions. They were recorded as instructional patterns, as demonstrations of how God consistently operates when His people are willing to believe that He has the final word about what is still possible. You are not too old for what God promised you. You are not too late for the life He wrote. The urgency with which the enemy was pressing the clock argument in that council today, the desperation behind it, was the urgency of someone who knows that if you refuse the lie, the promise breaks through. And when it breaks through, it arrives in ways that cannot be reversed. Refuse the clock, beloved. Refuse it today. Refuse it in this moment with the full weight of what I am carrying to you. Write in the comments right now, "My time is in God's hands." Write it as your declaration. Write it as your refusal. Write it as the moment the clock the enemy has been holding to your face lost its power over you. Because the instant you mean it, the instant it moves from your lips into genuine belief, a door in the invisible realm opens wide, and what God has been holding in trust for you takes one decisive step in your direction. The lie that it is too late is one of the enemy's oldest and most destructive lies. And what was placed in this envelope to counter it is not just a word, it is a vision, a picture of what heaven sees when it looks at your life in this season. Not what the world sees, not what fear says, what heaven sees. Dorothy, the third photograph. Now, I must speak to you about something that is harder to discuss than the enemy's plans, but that heaven considers equally vital for you to receive today. I want to talk to you about what God has been doing in you during the waiting. Because most people experience a long season of waiting as loss, as dead time, as years passing without movement, as the slow drain of a life that should have gone further by now. And the enemy, of course, reinforces that narrative at every opportunity, because a person who believes they have been abandoned by God is a person who has been softened for every other weapon he carries. But let me show you what this season has looked like from heaven's perspective. Because I was there. I was watching. And what I saw bore no resemblance to abandonment. What I saw was one of the most intensive, most careful, most loving seasons of preparation I have ever witnessed in a human life. God was building something in you during the hard years that cannot be built any other way. Not surface endurance, not the brittle kind that looks strong from the outside while cracking underneath, but the deep kind, the kind that has been tested at its most vulnerable points and held, the kind that comes only from going through something that should have broken you and finding, on the other side of it, to your own considerable surprise, that something in you stood, that you are still here, that the faith you thought was too small was, in fact, exactly the measure required to carry you through. He was building discernment, the ability to tell the real from the counterfeit, the true from the close, but not quite. This skill does not arrive fully formed. It develops through experience, through feeling the difference between something that seems right and something that is right, through having trusted the wrong thing and surviving the lesson, through spending enough time in the presence of God that your spirit has developed a sensitivity to His voice that can cut through noise. Every difficult season you have endured was, from heaven's vantage point, training your spiritual hearing. And what you will now hear clearly, because of what you have been through, you could not have heard with the same precision a decade ago. He was building capacity, because what God is releasing into your life in this season is not a small thing. It requires a person who can hold it, steward it, carry it without collapsing, and then, critically, transfer it to others. The people who will receive from your hands in the coming season are waiting for exactly what you will carry. And when they hear you speak, they will know immediately whether you are speaking from theory or from lived understanding. Because of what you have endured, because the valleys carved depth into you, you will meet them in the exact place where they are, and they will trust what you carry. All of that, every single day of it, was happening during the time that felt like waiting. Nothing was wasted. Not a day, not a tear, not a single prayer that seemed to dissolve into silence. God was answering all of it. He was answering it by building the person who would be ready to receive and carry what He was preparing to release. Today, that person is ready. Today, that person is you. Pause here, because what was just spoken over you about the season you have endured, heaven did not want it to pass by without a declaration being spoken over it. A declaration that you can hold, that you can keep, that you can return to when the waiting feels unbearable again. Dorothy, the third white card. I want to pause here, beloved. Let something settle. Some of you have been listening, and something is happening in you that you are slightly afraid of. A hope is stirring that you have been managing very carefully for a very long time. You have learned, through experience, to keep that hope at a controlled temperature, warm enough to pray, cool enough not to break again if the answer does not appear. And right now, it is threatening to rise past the temperature you decided was safe. I want you to let it rise, not recklessly, not past wisdom, but let it rise. Because carefully managing hope, while entirely understandable, is not what God designed for His people. He designed a hope that Paul described as an anchor, solid, immovable. Not because circumstances guarantee it, but because the character of the one who made the promise guarantees it. And the character of God has not shifted by a single degree since He spoke your name this morning. He is not a God who promises and forgets. He is not a God who releases a word and watches it dissolve in the air. He is the God of fulfillment, the God of follow-through, the God of the promise that arrives, sometimes impossibly, sometimes shockingly, always exactly, at the moment it was written to arrive. If you have been carrying a hope that began to feel more like a wound than a gift, bring it before God today, not with resignation, not with the prayer of someone who has mostly given up, but is making one final attempt. Bring it with expectation, with the specific, courageous, slightly terrifying expectation of someone who has received word from a completely reliable source that what they have been hoping for is closer than fear has allowed them to believe. Write in the comments right now. Write the word expectant. Write it as your declaration that today something shifted. Write it as your choice to move the hope from the place where you have been protecting it back to the place where it can actually receive what is coming toward you. There is something else the enemy discussed in that council today, and I cannot move past it without naming it clearly, because it operates so quietly that many people carry it for decades without ever having it accurately named for them. It is the belief, sometimes spoken, more often just lived from, that your needs are secondary, that the spiritually mature response to having needs is to minimize them, to ask for less, to make peace with less, to reframe the discipline of wanting less as holiness, when in many cases it is actually the long scar left by wanting and not being met. Some of you learned this as children, in homes where needs were a burden on the people around you, in families where love was real, but resources, emotional, financial, physical, were stretched so thin that the most loving thing you knew how to do was stop needing so loudly. Some of you learned it from relationships in which your needs were consistently treated as inconvenient, from communities where vulnerability was preached from the platform but rarely modeled in the pew, from a culture that celebrates the woman who is always giving and almost never acknowledges that something must be poured into her in order for the pouring to continue, and the enemy, who has been watching with precision for a very long time, learned to use this. He learned that a woman who has made a practice of minimizing her needs will, when the blessing finally arrives, reflexively make it smaller than it was sent. She will receive the provision and immediately start redistributing it before she has even stood in it. She will receive the love and immediately become suspicious of it. She will see the open door and immediately calculate whose needs matter more than her walking through it. Today, God is speaking directly to that pattern, and this is His word, not a suggestion, not a gentle nudge. This is a declaration. Stop making yourself small for my gifts. I did not design this provision to pass through you like a channel. I designed it to live in you, to belong to you, to change the actual texture of your daily life. You have given from scarcity for long enough. I am filling you, not to create a more efficient distribution system, but because you yourself are worth filling. Your life, not merely your usefulness, matters to me. What I want for you is not only that you will be the vessel through which others receive good things, but that you will receive good things. Stand in the blessing. Let it belong to you. That is not selfishness. That is obedience. We are now entering the very heart of this message. What comes next in this letter is something Archangel Michael described as the most personally significant thing he was sent to reveal today. Before you hear it, heaven placed an image in this envelope, an image to prepare your eyes and your spirit for what your heart is about to receive. Dorothy. The fourth photograph. Beloved, we are at the heart of today's message. And the heart of it is about an unopened room. I want to describe this to you as carefully as I know how. In the heavenly realm, every life has what I can only call a correspondence, a parallel existence in the eternal that contains the fullness of everything that life was created to be. Not an idealized alternative version of your life, not a better edition. The same life, the real life, the fully intended expression of the exact person you are, but without the damage that was done to it, without the theft, without the limitations that came not from God's design, but from the enemy's interference, from generational patterns that shaped you before you had the agency to choose otherwise, from wounds that closed doors they were never designed to close. In that correspondence, there is a room. It carries your name, and inside that room is everything that was promised to you that has not yet been received. It is not a room of regret. It is a room of readiness. Everything inside it is alive and waiting and oriented toward you, with the same eager expectation you would feel if something precious had been delivered and was sitting on your doorstep right now, waiting for you to come home. Today, God gave me the key to show you what is inside that room, not to torture you with what you do not yet hold, but to confirm that it is real, that it is yours, that it is waiting, not indefinitely, but for this specific season that heaven has been preparing you to receive. I looked inside, and I want to tell you what I saw. I saw peace, not a brief reprieve between difficulties, not a temporary exhale before the next wave, a settled, rooted, deep in the bones peace that no circumstance can fully reach. The kind that has been described by people who found it on the other side of their hardest season as the peace that makes absolutely no logical sense given everything around me. That peace is in the room with your name on it. I saw provision, not the bare minimum, not the just enough to barely survive, that the enemy has spent years trying to convince you is as good as it gets. Provision that removes the background anxiety about whether there will be enough, the kind that allows you to give freely, from a full place, rather than a depleted one. I saw a relationship, or the deepening of one, that carries the quality of being truly known, not the version of love that requires you to manage yourself carefully to keep it, not the version where you must perform contentment you do not always feel, but the version in which you can be fully present, fully honest, fully yourself, and be met with warmth and welcome rather than the subtle withdrawal that teaches people to perform instead of connect. I saw healing for a specific physical or emotional place in you that has been carrying an ache you have mostly stopped mentioning because you decided long ago that it is simply how things are now. It is not how things are. It is a problem with a solution, and the solution is already in your room. And I saw purpose walking in it, not working endlessly toward it. The difference between a season where purpose is something you sense but cannot quite inhabit, and a season where you wake up in the morning oriented, knowing why you are here, knowing what your hands are for, feeling the deep satisfaction of a life that is pointed in the exact direction it was made to go. All of this is in your room, all of it. And today, God pressed the key into my hand, not to hold for you, to give to you. So take it. Right now, wherever you are, say it out loud. I receive what is in my room. Say it like you mean it, because it is true. And the moment you say it with genuine belief, that room does not merely unlock. The door swings open. What was just read over you, the contents of that room, was not poetry. It was an inventory, a real, specific, heaven-authorized inventory of what belongs to you. And what was sealed into this envelope at this exact position is a declaration for you to keep, to put somewhere you will see it, to speak aloud on the mornings when the room feels far away. Dorothy, the fourth white card. Now let me speak practically, because heaven does not only deal in the eternal and invisible. Heaven intersects with the daily, the physical, the ordinary texture of your actual life. And part of what God released over you today has very tangible expressions you should be watching for in the days immediately ahead. Watch for doors opening in the area where you have experienced the most sustained frustration, the application that kept being turned away, the conversation that kept being postponed, the person you kept almost connecting with, but the timing never quite aligned, the opportunity that appeared at the wrong moment 3 times, and you began to wonder if the timing ever would be right. That area, specifically that area, is where the manifestation of today's release is most likely to first become visible to you. And when it does, remember today. Remember that you heard it was coming before it arrived. Watch for a shift in your own thinking that arrives without any clear external cause. A morning you wake up, and the familiar weight is lighter. Not instantly gone. The process is not completed in a single night, but lighter in a way that surprises you. A conversation where you hear yourself speaking about your future differently. A moment of clarity about a decision that has kept you paralyzed for months. These internal shifts are not random. They are the outward evidence of the inward work heaven is doing in you, right now as a consequence of this morning's release. Mark them. Record them. They are the first lines of the testimony that is forming in your life today. Watch for the unexpected, for the thing that arrives from a direction you were not watching. Heaven specializes in this. Provision that comes through a channel you did not set up, from a person you were not anticipating, by a route that makes it impossible to explain away as coincidence. God does this not merely to demonstrate his power, though the demonstration is magnificent. He does it so that when the shift comes, when the provision arrives, when the healing breaks through, you know exactly where it came from. And that knowing, that clear, undeniable attribution, is itself a part of the gift, because faith that is confirmed by visible demonstration produces a depth of trust in God that carries you through every subsequent season with an entirely different level of certainty. You were just told to watch for the open door, to expect it in the place where you have been frustrated the longest. Heaven did not leave that instruction without a visual testimony. This photograph was placed in this envelope to show you what that door looks like when God opens it, not when you force it. Dorothy, the 5th photograph. Beloved, I have been carrying something in this message from the first moment it was given to me. I have been building toward it carefully because I wanted you to have sufficient understanding to receive it in its full weight. Now, I am ready to give it to you. While I was observing the enemy's counsel today, watching the panic, watching the rushed and desperate strategizing, watching the scramble to deploy every available weapon before the release could reach you, I noticed something that not one of them seemed to notice. I noticed what was absent from the room, the thing that was conspicuously, glaringly missing from every argument, every proposed strategy, every weapon being brought to the table. Hope. They had no strategy for hope. They had weapons for exhaustion, for substitution, for the clock, for confusion, for shame. But they had nothing, absolutely nothing, specifically designed to overcome a person whose hope is intact. And standing there, watching them scramble, I understood something with a clarity that stopped me still. Hope intact renders every other weapon they carry dramatically less effective. An exhausted person with hope does not stay down. A confused person with hope keeps seeking until clarity comes. A person carrying shame who still has hope will not let the shame speak the final word over their life. Hope is not naive. It is not wishful thinking dressed in religious clothing. In its true and full form, it is a weapon, one of the most formidable in all of heaven's armory, and the enemy has no direct counter for it. Today, beloved, I am carrying hope to you, not as an emotion, not as a feeling that fluctuates with your circumstances, as a substance, as a real, transmittable, possessible thing, delivered directly from the throne room of God into your spirit, right now, as you receive these words. The kind of hope Paul described as never putting to shame, the hope that God himself backs with his own character, his own history, his own unbroken track record of fulfilling what he speaks. That hope is yours today. It is landing in you right now. Take a breath. Let it settle. Let it settle into the place where the exhaustion lives. Let it move into the rooms where weariness has taken up residence and made itself at home. Let it reach the deep drawers where the disappointments have been stored, not to erase them, because they are part of your story, and your story is not erased, but to sit alongside them and say, this is not the end. This was never the end. God is not finished with this story. And what he writes next is going to change how you read everything that came before it. Stop. Do not let what was just said pass through you like ordinary words. What Archangel Michael just revealed, that the enemy has no weapon designed for a person with hope intact, is one of the most strategically important things heaven has ever spoken to you. It was placed in this envelope as a card, because it needs to be somewhere physical, somewhere you can see it. Dorothy, the fifth white card. Some of you have been carrying this hope for a long time, returning to it again and again in the quiet hours, praying the same prayer with fewer words each year, not because the faith diminished, but because you ran out of ways to elaborate on the one essential thing. God, I need you to move. I need something to change. I am still here. I am still waiting. And I do not know how much longer I can make waiting feel like trust rather than defeat. To you, I want to say something directly. That faithfulness has been seen, not vaguely, not categorically, specifically. Heaven does not keep a general account labeled faithful people. It has your name. It has your history. It has the record of every morning you return to belief when walking away would have been the easier thing. Every moment you chose to trust when the evidence in front of you seemed to argue against trusting. Every prayer whispered in the dark that you were not sure was going anywhere. God holds that record not as a ledger to balance, but as evidence. Evidence he will use when he fulfills what he promised, so that there is no ambiguity about what just happened and why, so that you will know, unmistakably, absolutely, that what just shifted in your life was the answer to the very prayer you were starting to lose the words for. And for those of you who arrived here today, for the very first time, who were not looking for something like this, but found it anyway, you did not come late. You did not miss anything. The message written for today was written knowing you would be here. Your arrival is not accidental. It is arranged by the same God who spoke your name this morning, who moved first before the enemy could react, who has been steering the invisible things in your life toward this specific moment of reception for longer than you know. You are not a stranger in this word. You are exactly who it was sent for. Before the final section of this letter, before Archangel Michael delivers the most personal word he was sent to carry today, heaven placed this image in the envelope, not to be shown at random, at this precise moment, because what is about to be spoken over you deserves to be received with your eyes as well as your ears. Look at this carefully, beloved. Dorothy, the 6th photograph. Beloved, I am now approaching the final portion of what I was sent to deliver today. And before I give it, I must do one more thing. I must speak directly to the fear. Because some of you have been hearing everything in this message with a part of you that is genuinely moved, genuinely receiving, and another part that is quietly, persistently afraid. Afraid that this is not real. Afraid that you will receive this word, walk back into your week, and nothing will look different. And you will feel foolish for believing. Afraid that the promises are real for other people, people with cleaner histories, simpler lives, more consistent faith, but that somehow they do not fully apply to you. Afraid that the breakthrough God has been promising is always one season away, always just past the next threshold, always just out of reach. I am not going to tell you that faith is never difficult, or that hope is never painful. It is difficult. It is painful. God knows that. He does not ask you to pretend otherwise. What he asks is something far smaller and far more achievable than you may have made it in your mind. He asks you to take one step toward the door he has opened. Just one. Not a leap. Not a sudden, perfect, doubt-free transformation. One step. One small, trembling, imperfect, genuine movement in the direction of receiving what he has placed before you. That is what today is asking. One step. And if the step you can manage right now is simply staying until the very last word of this message, that is enough. That step alone declares, I am here. I am present. I am choosing to receive even while I'm afraid. And that choice, that one act of persistent presence in the face of fear and doubt and weariness, is exactly the kind of faith that moves heaven. Not the flashy kind, not the perfectly composed kind. The quiet, stubborn, will not quit kind that keeps showing up even when it does not feel like enough. You have been showing that kind of faith today, and heaven has been watching every single moment of it. Before the final decree is spoken, I speak once more to the heart of the woman who has been here from the very first word. The one who did not expect to cry, but did. The one who reached the middle and thought about stopping, but chose to stay. The one who has not told anyone the depth of what she is carrying in this season. Not because it is not real, but because she is not sure the words would do it justice. The one who held her breath at certain sentences because they named something she thought was too private, too specific, too personal, to be in any message she might find. You were known before you arrived here today. The God who sent this message is not surprised by a single thing you're feeling right now. He has been aware of every layer. He has been present through every night it felt heaviest, and he speaks to you now with absolute gentleness and absolute certainty. You are going to be okay. Not eventually. Not after an unspecified stretch of additional suffering. You are going to be okay. And the process of becoming okay has already begun. It began the moment you chose to stay with this word today. What comes next in your story is not a continuation of what has been. What comes next is the chapter, the previous chapters, all of them, even the hardest ones, were preparing you to live. You are stronger than you know. You have survived things that would have ended the journey for someone not carrying what you carry. You were built for this next chapter. And heaven is reaching its hand toward you saying, "Come. It is time. Let us walk into it together." Before the decree is spoken, before Archangel Michael delivers the binding final declaration over your life, there is one more word that was sealed in this envelope to be read aloud at this exact moment. This is for the grief you have carried quietly, the prayers whispered in the dark when no one was listening. Dorothy, the 6th white card. Dearly beloved, we have arrived at the final portion. The decree, the binding, heaven-released, God-spoken, angel-delivered, permanent, and irrevocable decree over your life that the enemy spent this entire morning trying to prevent you from hearing. Are you ready? Take a breath. Open every part of yourself that you can open, and receive. In the name of the God who created you, who knew you before your first breath, and who has loved you without interruption through every moment of your existence, I, Archangel Michael, commander of heaven's armies, carrier of the fire sword, guardian of the chosen, declare the following over you today. Every plan written in darkness against your life today is null, not delayed, not under review, not coming back. Null. The ink of it has gone to ash. The strategies are scattered beyond all retrieval. The agreements the enemy tried to forge in your name are burned completely, and the smoke rising from them is the last thing they will ever produce. Every good thing that was held at the threshold because of those plans, it is crossing now. The blessing that was delayed is advancing. The door that appeared perpetually almost open is open. The miracle you stopped speaking aloud because you were afraid to be disappointed again. Speak it. It is closer than your very breath. It is on the other side of the fear that has been standing between you and it. And that fear has been removed today. Every wound the enemy used as a point of access into your life, God closes that entry today. He does not bandage it. He does not manage it. He heals it. From the deepest interior layer to the surface, the places in you that have ached for years with a sadness you could not always name. Heaven has a name for them, and the name is healed. Beginning today, beginning now, every relationship. The enemy poisoned in order to harm you. God is reworking it in his hands. What was designed to produce isolation will produce deeper connection. What was designed to produce bitterness will produce hard-won wisdom. What was designed to close your heart forever will produce, paradoxically, miraculously. Only God could do this. The most genuine opening of your heart that you have known since you were young enough to trust without rehearsing it. Every area of your future that the enemy clouded with confusion and delay, it is being unclouded today. The path is clear. The direction is known. The next right step is already becoming visible to you. You are not walking into fog. You are walking into increasing light, the kind that grows stronger the further you walk into it. And over every worry that has traveled with you through this season, every night lying awake, running the same fears, every morning waking and feeling the weight settle onto your chest before your feet even touched the floor, over all of it, heaven speaks peace. Not the shallow peace that depends on circumstances cooperating. The deep peace, the unexplainable peace, the peace that passes understanding, standing guard over your heart and your mind like a warrior who does not take breaks and does not negotiate with the enemy. That peace is your inheritance today. Take it. There is one final thing I am carrying in this letter. It is perhaps the most personal thing of all. God asked me to tell you something he has been waiting to say. And this is it. He has missed you, not in the way that implies you were gone, or that he ever lost track of you. He was there through every moment of distance, every season of doubt, every period of going through the motions without feeling the connection. He was there. He saw it all. He missed you the way a loving parent misses closeness with their child when the child is hurting and pulled deeply inward, not because the parent has gone anywhere, but because the intimacy they long for has been interrupted by pain. He has been waiting for a moment like this, a moment when you are still enough to hear, open enough to receive, worn down enough by the weight of carrying everything yourself that you are finally ready to let him carry it. This moment, today, this is the moment he has been waiting for, and he is not coming to it with accusation. He is not coming with a list of your failures. He is coming with arms wide open, with eyes filled with a love that is not diminished by a single degree through everything you have been through, with a voice that says, "You are home. You have never not been home. I have you. I have always had you. And what I am going to do in your life from today forward will make everything you have endured not only make sense, but feel, in retrospect, like the exact preparation required for the extraordinary thing that was always coming." If your heart has received that today, if those words landed somewhere real and deep, write in the comments, "I believe it." Let that be your declaration, your agreement with what heaven spoke over you today. And before I speak the very final words of this decree, send this message to someone. One person whose face you have thought of while listening to this. You know who they are. Send it, because the word that reached you today is capable of reaching them through you. And as you send it, the decree spoken over your life today does not diminish. It amplifies. The final decree is about to be spoken. This is the word the enemy most feared you would hear today. This is what every weapon, every strategy, every desperate plan in that dark council was assembled to prevent from reaching you before the last words are sealed upon your life. The final image in this envelope was placed here to witness what happens when heaven's commander declares victory. Dorothy, the final photograph. Archangel Michael's final words in this letter are these: "Today was a day of war, and the war was won in your favor. The council that assembled in darkness to write the next chapter of your suffering has been dismantled, and every one of its plans reduced to ash. The enemy's desperation to prevent this message from reaching you was his own acknowledgement that you carry something extraordinary, and his failure to stop it is heaven's confirmation that the extraordinary cannot be contained. You are sealed, you are covered, you are protected by the fire of God's love, not a passive or gentle fire, an active, consuming, enemy-scattering fire that surrounds you whether you feel it or not. Walk forward from today differently than you walked in. Not because every circumstance has instantly changed, though some things will change faster than you expect. Walk differently because you know something today that you did not fully know this morning. You know the darkness took you seriously enough to plot against you, which means heaven values you enough to break up the plot. You know God rose from the throne today and spoke a decree over your life that cannot be reversed. You know the door is open. The season has turned. The waiting is ending. And the good that was written for you before your first breath is advancing toward you right now, from multiple directions at once. Receive it. Release what you were never meant to carry. Take one step toward the open door. Trust the God who has not for a single moment of your life, let you go. And write in the comments what your spirit is saying right now. Whatever it is, 1 word or 100. Let it be your declaration. Let it be your, I was here, I received this, and I am stepping forward. The armies of heaven are with you. My sword will not be sheathed until what was written for you is walking in your hands. And God himself, who called you by name today in the highest council of eternity, is smiling as you rise. Go in strength. Go in peace. Go in the absolute, unshakable knowledge that you are loved beyond measure, protected beyond comprehension, and that today was the turning point.
Every single time I read one of these letters all the way to the end, I need a moment before I can say anything else. Because when the words land, when they truly land, ordinary speech feels thin by comparison. I want you to look at what is on this table right now. Every one of these items was sealed inside that envelope before I opened it. Every photograph, every card. They were placed here in this exact order, at this exact sequence, by someone who knew what would need to be seen and when it would need to be seen. I did not choose the order. I did not choose the images. They were chosen before this morning began. That is not something I take lightly, and I hope you don't either. I want to say something I don't always say at the close of these. I want to tell you about who I think of while I'm reading, because as I was sitting with this letter at 3 a.m. in the dark at this table, I kept seeing the faces of the women I know are awake at that hour, not by choice, because sleep stopped cooperating years ago, because there is a quality to that particular silence that amplifies everything you are carrying, every unanswered question, every hope you have been managing very carefully, because hoping too openly hurts too much when the answer doesn't come. I kept thinking, this letter is for those hours. This is what God wants you to know at 3 a.m. when you are sitting alone in the dark, wondering if any of it is still moving. It is moving. Today, it moved. I believe every word in this letter, not because I have never had seasons of doubt. I have had them. Not because faith is always easy for me. It is not. But because over the time I have been carrying these messages, I have watched what happens in the lives of people who receive them, who hold them, who return to them. The pattern is consistent and it is clear. These words do something, not because of me, because of who sends them. If you want to keep receiving these letters as they arrive, subscribe to this channel, Letters from Archangel Michael. That is all, just so the next one finds you. And if today shifted something in you, if something was named that needed naming, if the hope rose past the temperature you had set as safe, please share this with someone. You know who they are. Their face came to you at least once while you were listening. Send it to them. The message that found you today was always meant to travel further. Let it travel through you. God bless you, beloved, deeply, specifically, and today.